Blue Wire Network. My name's Rob Lowder. That's Kyle Posey. And we cover the 49ers for all you folks on the other side of the screen, on the other side of the speaker. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate you hanging out. Appreciate you joining in. Don't get hurt. Okay? Don't get hurt while you're here. Don't get injured. Because if it were the 49ers, it would happen. They have found a way to, again, continue the I said to KP earlier today that the 49ers' ability to get injured at practice is both insanely predictable and unbelievable. It's like you want to believe that that things are going to change, that things are going to be, it's like some toxic relationship. You want to believe that the person's going to turn the corner and maybe be a little bit different, or you guys will be a little bit different together. But nope, the 49ers and injuries just cannot shake themselves. And obviously the big one that we have to make sure we talk about is Ricky Pearsall, who elected to have season-ending PCL surgery before his season even began. Heartbreaking, man. Like, I tweeted about it. It's rough, man, because like I said, and KP, I'll get to your thoughts next. As far as the football player and the player I've seen on the field, I have no question that Ricky Pearsall is an NFL caliber wide receiver. He's a starting wide receiver in the NFL. And, you know, the more frustrating thing is coming out of college, he was healthy in college and he played most of his games. And the 49ers had no reason to be weary of injury issues. But since he has gotten into the pros, from everything from taking incoming rounds from a firearm to being unable to recover from a PCL injury that happened early last year. And they tried to work through it. They tried to make it through. You know, they tried to let it recover the way that most doctors would recommend. I'm sure most doctors did recommend, and it just didn't happen. And now he's got to end his season with a surgery that, from what I've read and what I've heard, isn't even a guarantee that he makes a full recovery or that he's able to come back to the game. So KP, again, it's a couple days old at this point, but what did you make of Ricky Pearsall having to shut it down?
I mean, it's still a really freaking big story regardless. We just haven't had the opportunity to talk about it. I don't know. So we know who Deebo Samuel is. We're going to talk about him as well. I thought, and this was under the assumption that Ricky was going to play in the teens somewhere, that the 49ers offense was about to be dynamite this year because of him, because of Pearsall getting to play on the other side of Mike Evans, because of Pearsall getting the benefit of not having to play, you know, in between the hashes, so to say, and he'll be able to stay healthy because of that. So because they drafted Stripling. And I think the ceiling lowers drastically. And that's, again, like maybe Deebo ends up being 2023 version, which would be great for this team. Maybe Deebo just needs another wide receiver one, which the 49ers have. But just the idea that, you know, you're going to have to go, another year without finding out who Pearsall is as a player. They
Right.
know who he is in spurts. The problem just is, man, again, what's going to happen? Here's my question. What happens next year when he goes for 1,200 yards and stays healthy? Like, what do you do? Do you just let him walk? Do you take the risk and hope that, you know, okay, stayed healthy this year beyond what happened, the catastrophes from the previous 3 years? They're going to be in such a pickle next year, because if you let him walk, we know what happens. Every year from here on out, he's going to be an 1,100-yard receiver. So Really tough, man. Really tough spot to be in at your first rounder. You want to be right about your first rounder. You want to give him as long of a leash as you can. But this is 3 years in a row now, and didn't even get to make it to the preseason to miss the season. So it's about as brutal as it gets when it comes to the Pearsall topic.
Arisiaga somewhere in there said Dustin Perry has the magic touch. Dustin Perry, of course, is the man that is going to continue to be in the spotlight. There's just no way around it. We're going to get into the injury conversation. We'll go Ricky Pearsall, we'll go Deebo Samuel, and then we'll get into the injury conversation. Dustin Perry is, of course, the vice president of player health and performance, and he's been with the 49ers for 8 seasons. So we're going to get into that conversation. It's going to happen. Arisiaga also said you could franchise tag Ricky Pearsall if he's good, which is an option. You know, I don't know what the wide receiver franchise tag is up to at this point. But yeah, I've thought of that very thing. And the thing I tweeted about is as bleak as it looks like right now for Ricky Pearsall, for 49ers fans, for the 49ers front office, for everybody involved in that situation, there is still a way in which he turns the corner. KP already mentioned it, man. If the surgery goes okay, if it gives him what he needs in terms of how that knee feels in order to operate, you know, throughout the offseason, if it what's the best way to describe it? If he's struggling after 2 days of training camp, then you know he was struggling throughout the offseason, and he was just hoping something was going to change. And the longer time went on, the more he probably, if he could still feel it having issues, the more he probably regretted not having surgery. But again, and I think I didn't see who wrote it, but somebody on NinersNation.com wrote an article about the fact that, you know, a lot of people were inferring that the 49ers or somebody, Ricky Pearsall's doctors, it was some sort of malpractice for him to not have already had the surgery. PCLs typically, unless you've done significant damage, heal on their own. And It just takes downtime. The reason the surgery is not common, or the reason it's they hesitate to do the surgery, is because the surgery itself doesn't even have a great recovery. Like, the chance of recovery is not great. There's a chance that Ricky Pearsall isn't ever able to come back to football. So why would you rush into a surgery that doesn't have great odds to begin with, and when the injury typically heals itself? So I don't think there's any negligence in terms of the 49ers waiting. It's just he gave it one last shot, and obviously training camp, it didn't take long at all for him to know what he needed to do, which sucks, man. It sucks. But again, there is a way in which he turns the corner, dude. The surgery is successful. He spends the next year working his way back, and I wanted to say the recovery timeline was 9 to 12 months.
Yeah, 9 to 12. My pushback to that would be, okay, and nothing's guaranteed after surgery, right? You could be a completely different athlete. You might luck up and become a better athlete afterward. But let's say,
what's the old baseball movie? Is it Rookie of the Year, where he breaks his arm and then he can pitch? Have you never seen that movie? You're a baseball guy.
For sure. Yeah, no. Yeah, I know. Or Ricky. I know who you're talking about.
Rosengartner.
Yeah, there we go. That's great. What a reference. I've
got a lot of them in the bag to a point where I have to keep myself from doing it. But so your pushback.
Yeah. So, okay, let's say he had the surgery in March and everything does go well. It's not ahead of schedule, nothing like that, but he's just on time. He hits all his markers, and come January, which would be right around the 10-month mark, 49ers in the playoffs. Now Ricky has a chance to rev himself up and maybe contribute after all that time off, right? And be a threat in the playoffs. Was that worth the risk? Knowing that, and again, it's so easy to do this in hindsight because we don't know what he was doing from March to July through July. Even when I was in OTAs, they were holding him out. So that tells me that they were cautious or trying to be overly cautious then. But wouldn't it have made more sense, looking at whatever data you had, understanding that realistically he was probably going to need surgery, to have it right away? And best case scenario was he was going to miss the regular season, but maybe come back and help you in the playoffs. Maybe it's not the wild card. Maybe it's not even the divisional round, but you might have gotten lucky enough to have a player like that, a player of that caliber, back in the NFC Championship. Of course, that is a hell of a scenario, like a hell of a hypothetical, but it's one that's not the most unrealistic either.
I think it all just depends on what the doctors were saying. Like if all the doctors around him were still convinced that there was a good chance and it was going to heal itself, then you got to give it the time, man. It almost seems like it was a roll of the dice,
Right.
and he came up snake eyes. So, this is a good question, and I don't know the answer. But Emmanuel Ferreira said, "Can they do the thing where the season doesn't accrue towards his contract like they did with Jacob Cowling? It feels like Ricky gets another year to show up. No, I mean if Jacob Cowling's last year didn't count, then does the same thing happen this year? I'll have to look into that. I honestly
Yeah,
don't know
I
the
do
answer.
not know the answer to that, and I do not even want to pretend like I have the information on that.
Right.
So
It's a great question, though.
it's a fantastic question
It's
because
important too.
yeah, they get a 5th year on him, so they're going to want to extend that as much as possible.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely something I'm going to look into when I get off of here. I wish I had the answer now, but Kawachiptu said I think they can, but he's not positive. He also said we have the best training staff and doctors in the country, according to Jed. According to Jed York, man. Well,
Tell him, Jed.
tell him, Jed. So obviously stepping in, can't replace, sort of replace, might replace, but stepping back into the fold is none other than Deebo Samuel. A big deal. And I will say this: you and I were both on the no, don't resign Deebo train. We both have said it. Neither of us were adamant about it. It just wasn't necessarily a road I felt like the 49ers needed to go down again. I went and watched his. Now they were highlights, but I went and watched his highlights from his last year in Washington, and I may have underestimated his effectiveness as an NFL player. And maybe I was looking at, because you got to understand too, we're all looking at Deebo from a different lens when he was getting paid to be the guy and he was making 20 something million a year.
Sure.
And so under that lens, there was no question that Deebo was not doing enough to remain on the roster. And that's why he got traded. But coming back and being on a 1-year deal up to $7 million, I think the up to needs to be emphasized there.
Oh, he's hitting that. Whatever those escalators are now, they probably felt like they got fleeced because they signed that deal probably thinking Pearsall was going to be in the fold.
Right. And John Lynch said the 49ers have been talking to Deebo Samuel way before Ricky Pearsall got hurt. And obviously Ricky Pearsall's injury pushed things along. Where do you think now, what I was about to say was in watching a lot of Deebo Samuel's highlights, I was impressed at what he was still able to do as a just basic receiver. It wasn't lights out or anything, and he still had that chippiness after the catch that I love to see. I think Deebo Samuel was, while he was in his prime with the 49ers, he was one of the absolute best players in the NFL when it comes to yards after the catch. And I think last year with Washington, he was still like 7th. He was still very high on the list of receivers when it comes to after the catch. And so that's one thing the 49ers are going to hope to benefit from. The other thing I noticed is they played him out of the slot quite a bit. He was, I thought I heard somebody say it was roughly 2/3 of his snaps were out of the slot. Do you think the 49ers, well, then you know what? I'll just say this. I don't even want to guide the question. How do you think, and John Lynch alluded to this a little bit, but how do you think the 49ers are going to use Deebo Samuel?
I think part of the reason Deebo was brought in was to be able to play that F role, that slot role, because he's a tremendous blocker. I know we haven't really talked about this, but if you think about when the 49ers were at their best, it was because of Christian McCaffrey breaking all those runs, Deebo and Ayuk were a big part of those as blockers. And I think they need somebody who is just fearless to be able to block those linebackers, block those safeties, and have the body type to do that. So I would imagine he spends more time over the middle and being that wide receiver who catches, backside slants and whatnot. That was kind of his bread and butter. Washington also used him a little bit enough out of the backfield. I think he's going to line up in the backfield too. You can't forget about the other injuries to the running backs, which you haven't even gotten to. So looking at Deebo's allotment based on where he's aligned last season, he had 260 snaps in the slot. He had 141 snaps out wide. So pretty big discrepancy there, almost 2-to-1, just being inside. And then he had 14 snaps like from a tight alignment. So as like a tight end-ish nasty split, as they call it. And he also had 15. He ran 15 routes out of the backfield, which is pretty interesting to me. So I think Kyle's going to move him around. I think it's kind of hey, if the running backs aren't up to par, I can use him as a backfield. I can use it or in the backfield as a weapon. But I think it's going to be like a DeMarcus Robinson more so as a Z. I think it's going to be one of the slender wide receivers as Z. And that's not to say Deebo is a certain type, but I
He
just
looks
think
good.
sure. And you mentioned about how we weren't overly excited to bring Deebo back. Yeah, that's because I thought Ricky Pearsall was on the team. I thought if you bring Deebo back, you're going to take away snaps from other guys like that. But I would much rather use a Robinson, a Cowing, a Watkins at Z, and then let Samuel play in the middle along with Stribling as well. But in my mind, the 49ers are much better suited, and Deebo as well, when he's playing inside and he doesn't have, basically like a Christian Gonzalez, like one of the top corners guarding him. I think he's much better when he has one of those smaller nickel size and they can't get around him.
We have to put a halt to the entire podcast right now because John Chapman of the 49ers Rush podcast has entered the building. Hat tip to the legends. I go into almost every single, not every single one, but almost every single one of John's 49ers Rush streams, and I always give him a hat tip. So I'm very excited that I get to give him one back. For what we do for the community absolutely pales in what comparison to what you do for the 49ers community, John. So appreciate you stopping by, man. It's always a pleasure. We'll get you on here. I'll get on there. We'll get on there. We'll combine forces. Our people will talk to your people soon, and we'll do something. We got to do something. I hate the
I
fact
will
that
see you at some point this year, John. When? I don't know. Probably 2 points, 3 points this year, but looking forward to seeing you, homie.
Yeah, the 49ers have gotten incredibly stubborn when it comes to us going around with that credential. So we're still working through that. They, yeah, that's a story in and of itself. I may make that a podcast story. I may not, but so you got Deebo Samuel, and he played a lot of the slot in Washington. And I was impressed with what I saw. It's not somebody that's going to drastically change the face of this offense, but he's still a player that defenses have to worry about, not in the sense schematically. You don't necessarily have to plan to face Deebo Samuel like you did in 2023, but he can still make corners look bad in terms of physicality. He can still break a tackle and take one to the house. He was still creating separation with speed. Like Deebo Samuel's never going to be that route runner, but he was still getting open and he was still managing to run away from guys. He was still managing to catch balls downfield for scores or for big gains. And so, I think I needed to almost correct myself in what I felt like the 49ers were getting when they signed Deebo Samuel based on my own feelings towards him when his tenure ended with the 49ers versus what he did last year with Washington and how the 49ers might use him now and what he's still capable of doing. I honestly was impressed. Now, again, they were highlights. You're seeing every time he got the ball in his hands. It was pretty long, though. It was about 8 minutes, I think. And I saw a lot of great plays, and I saw a player that can help this offense. He's not going to hold the offense back. Is he going to have the same capabilities as a receiver as Ricky Pearsall would have had? No. Ricky Pearsall is a much quicker player, a much better route runner, a much better separator, a better pure receiver. But again, Ricky Pearsall doesn't have the Deebo qualities, the take a 5-yard slant, take a 5-yard out, take a screen, take a whatever you want, take an end around and make a couple guys miss and take it to the house. I still think there are probably still corners and players in the secondary out there that are afraid to square up with Deebo Samuel, in terms of a guy getting the ball in front of you. So I still think there's plays that can be made, and I'm excited to see. I would like to see if there was, if my ignorant butt had control over where these guys line up, I would like to see the 49ers move Deshaun Stribling over to Z, where Ricky Pearsall was going to play, and then put Deebo Samuel in the slot.
I think we see a good bit of that, honestly.
Yeah, and maybe that takes time. Maybe Demarcus Robinson starts out there and Deebo Samuel's in the slot. But you also made a good point, and as much as it's used kind of condescendingly at this point, I still think the wide back role still applies. And if you were looking for a running back that's capable of doing Christian McCaffrey type things out of the backfield, you got Deebo Samuel. Deebo Samuel can have an impact on the passing game out of the backfield just as well as Christian McCaffrey can.
I didn't mean that as shade, by the way.
No, not you. No, every time people talk about Deebo Samuel as a wide back, I feel like they're kind of just making fun of the fact that it was a thing at one point.
Sure. Which it got him a beefy deal, man. If I was him, if I were him, I would not. Hey, make fun of me all you want to, man. I got a bag out of that. Right. Another area where I think he could help out, and this is where they're kind of, the positions in limbo. He is an amazing kick returner. I felt like it took them too long to put Deebo as a kick returner the first time.
Because who the hell wants to tackle that guy at full speed?
Last year, he averaged 30 yards per kick return, which would have been fourth in the league, I believe. He just didn't have enough returns to qualify. I think he only had 15 or so. But if you remember, I think it was even 2024, definitely in 2023, but he was having some returns where he'd get to the 40, the 45, the 50, and just like that, you're in Pinero's or the kicker's range. So, yeah, I would look to get him even more opportunities, get the ball in his hands even more with return opportunities like that.
Well, the good thing is, too, is the 49ers don't have a clear-cut kick returner right now.
Exactly.
They don't have, it's still a competition. So there's really no reason that Deebo Samuel shouldn't get burned there. And I think John Lynch, I didn't see because the special teams coordinator talked to the media today. I didn't get a chance to read through the notes and see what he said or if he was asked about Deebo. Did you get a chance to see those at all?
I did not, no.
Okay. So I'm assuming that he's going to get plenty of opportunity in the return game. And again, you're at a point now where how can you take advantage of somebody like Deebo and having him back in the building? It's in the return game, it's in the backfield, and to me, it's in the slot. And that just gives him a little bit of grace as a receiver and if you're not, for some reason, anybody listening is not aware, if you're playing in the slot, you're usually about 2 yards off the line of scrimmage, depending on who the coach is. Could be 1 yard, could be 2, could even be 3. Some coaches like to pull them back even further. And that gives receivers a little bit of room to work. You can't press them. They get a running start. That would help somebody like Deebo, who is physical, especially once he gets up some speed. So hopefully the 49ers looked at what he did in Washington, saw that he was playing the majority of snaps out of the slot, and saw how well that worked for them. Now, if for some reason they feel like Deshaun Stribling's development and playing in the slot is going to benefit him, then I guess you take Deebo Samuel, you put him over at Z. Did he not play Z when he was with the 49ers?
Yeah, he played a good bit of Z. But again, I think the reason that it makes sense, like you're able to get away with that now, is because you have a true X. Like he is a true Z. When they try to make him the isolation receiver, which they did a couple of times in the Super Bowl, it's not going to work. By the way, I saw the transcript. Brand Boyer did say some things about Deebo returning. He was asked, what does that mean to you? Like getting Deebo back? Is he now the kickoff return guy? So perfect. Exactly what we were talking about. Brand Boyer says, quote, well, certainly when they told me that he was coming, I was like, hell yeah, let's go, because he is a difference maker. He's obviously proven and he's done it at a very, very high level. I'm really anxious. We're all talking about it to get him in our scheme. He's just talking about how he's watched him, yada, yada, yada. Once he gets up to speed, it's going to be a joy to be his special teams coach, is what he said. So I would imagine they're going to entertain the idea. Like, why wouldn't you, right? Based on, not having a body, like knowing the injury history with Watkins and Cowing, as much as you want to get the ball in their hands, Deebo is essentially like a guy built for that position in my mind. So yeah, it would make a ton of sense.
Yeah, it's exciting to see, they lose a pure receiver and a downfield target that was going to be open most of the time in Ricky Pearsall, and they gain a lesser receiver in Deebo Samuel, but maybe a player that can impact the offense in a larger way. We'll see. I had high hopes for Ricky Pearsall this season. I thought that he was gonna. My way of saying it was I thought that he was gonna compete with Mike Evans for some sort of statistic, whether it was receptions, whether it was yards, whether it was touchdowns. I thought that he would give Mike Evans a run for his money in some statistical category, maybe even like yards per catch. So I expected big things for him, and now obviously that's going to have to wait. But again, when it comes to Pearsall, I'm still optimistic that he can turn it around, man. We'll see how this surgery goes, and if he can come back. and give himself one last year. And again, maybe it's 2 years. Like we said up there, Emmanuel Ferrero asked, there's a chance that maybe Ricky Pearsall doesn't accrue a season. I don't know how that works. I'm curious. I'm interested to look it up. But speaking of injuries, KP, Bleacher Report
Got a few to go through.
Tweeted out earlier that the 49ers have ranked among the NFL's 10 most injured teams in 12 of their last 13 seasons. And I can guarantee you that the one time that they did not rank among those teams in the last 12 of 13 seasons was 2023, when they went all the way to the Super Bowl and should have won it. So here we are again. So far through like 5 or 6 practices, the 49ers have Mike Evans, a little bit on the news side. That was put out today that he has a quad strain and he's out for a short amount of time. It's not considered serious. Deshaun Stribling has been held out for a couple practices with hamstring tightness. Ricky Pearsall's season is over with a knee injury. Christian Kirk hasn't practiced in training camp because he has a calf injury. He got like a snap. Jordan James is out with a fractured rib that was suffered when pads weren't even on. Fellow running back Kalen Black recently suffered a groin injury, abductor injury, and he's out for a short period of time. Mikhail Kamara, the undrafted free agent they brought in out of Indiana, pass rusher, he's done for the year with a torn ACL. Keon White, their defensive end that got shot in the offseason, suffered an abductor injury, which groin.
Yes.
And then safety Malik Mustafa, he's been out for the past few practices with a hamstring strain. Vidarian Lowe, their backup swing tackle, on this tweet, they have him as Vidaria Lower. Vidarian Lower. He had a high ankle sprain. He may be coming back relatively soon. We'll see. I never really got any information on how severe it was. Continuing on, rookie defensive lineman Grayson Halton, he has a knee bruise. Backup defensive lineman Andrew Farmer had a back issue. He's already been released. Kyle Shanahan was in a car accident. They even threw that on here. George Kittle is obviously out with an Achilles, and Brandon Ayuk is on the reserve list. Just the emails that have been sent over the last few days. The 49ers signed running back Khalil Herbert and defensive lineman Titus Leo, and they waived cornerback Eli Apple and waived injured defensive lineman Mikhail Kamara. They signed tight end Josiah DeGara. I don't know how to say his last name. DeGara. And wide receiver Trenton Irwin, and then they waived cornerback Derek Canteen and waived injured tight end Tanner McLaughlin, who they even forgot to announce that they signed him in the first place. So that's how long he was on the team. You got they signing defensive lineman Quentin Bell, defensive lineman KJ Henry, and they waived injured William Bradley King and Andrew Farmer. Again, the only reason I'm saying is because these are all signings based on how many injuries the 49ers have taken. And then at the bottom, you've got defensive lineman Kevin Givens being re-added to the team on a 1-year deal. And then they waived defensive lineman Evan Anderson, who I don't think was hurt, bless his heart. So KP, where are you at? Where are you at on, where are you at on the team's injuries, and just what's your take on it? What do you feel when you see people talk about how often the 49ers are injured?
Well, going through the names, you just reeled them all off. The fact that they've had today they've had 6 practices, but coming into today, they've had 14 players suffer injuries, and that was through 5 practices. And I believe 1 or 2 of those were only fully padded. So not counting the walkthroughs, dangerous assumption, but assuming that nobody got hurt during the walkthroughs, that's just an inflated number, man. Like, how does that happen? Like that's not happening to other teams. I refuse to believe that this is happening to others. I'm not going to say injuries don't happen, because of course that's the case. But 14, the 49ers had to have a defensive tackle practice with the defensive ends because they only had 2 bodies. Today, their 5th-round rookie, who, by the way, this team is not the greatest when it comes to moving rookies around positions. They had to have a 5th-round rookie, Jaden Duggar, go from, yes, that's exactly what I'm about to say. They had to have a linebacker who was a safety convert play on the edge now because they don't have enough bodies. So now maybe Raheem Morris doesn't have a choice but to go to the 5-man fronts now because they don't have any big bodies there. It's nuts, man. It sucks because on paper, this team, even with the Rams additions, is still one of, if not the team to beat in the NFL. The problem is it's August 3rd right now, and 14 freaking players, and not just random players, right? These are contributing. Malcolm Mustafa, Mike Evans, DeJon Stridling, like all these guys are supposed to contribute a lot. Starters, high-level players on the roster. And man, August 3rd, we're talking about hamstring tightness, calf strains. The wide receiver depth chart is depleted already. It's nuts to think about. It's not totally surprising because we've followed this team for years and years and years, and this is just what happens. But it's still surprising because how? Like, why is this still a thing? I don't know, man. I would hate to be the strength and conditioning people, the doctors, the team, just the training staff in general, because think about like what they probably spent all off season thinking, hey, we're going to do this, and this different. And within days, the training table's full again. So like, what do you do with that? Where do you go from there?
I don't know, man. I really don't know where the 49ers go from here. And Strawberry React said, isn't it true that any kind of nagging injury would cause them to be cautious since it's only training
100%.
camp? Not saying it is a concern, but how many of these guys would play if it was actually week one?
Like Evans is a good example of that, right? So a calf strain, as soon as I saw calf strain, in my mind, all right, shut him down for a week. We'll see you then, and we'll go from there, because that's another thing that needs rest. The Stridling, hamstring tightness. In no way does he need to be running 30, 40-yard routes down the field in the event that some kind of hamstring could flare up, pop. So, no, like it makes a ton of sense to be overly cautious, knowing where the depth chart is now, but still, like, we can't ignore it, so.
Yeah, it's the biggest thing with me, and I'm not going to get into the substation stuff. That's all the rage. It's still too stupid for me to talk about. I can't until somebody absolutely proves that is destroying their bodies. I'm just not going to participating in it. And just me speaking right now is participating in it too much. But the damning part of all this so far is the fact that the 49ers have been among the NFL's 10. I don't know how Bleacher Report tracks this, but we know the 49ers, and we know this tracks. But the fact that they've been among the NFL's 10 most injured teams in 12 of the last 13 seasons, and that even exceeds Kyle Shanahan's time here. Kyle Shanahan has not been here for 13 seasons, but it's too consistent. Somebody, and in some way, somebody is doing something wrong. It's there. You don't just get to, again, if it was more sporadic, if it was less predictable, if it was, then you're just talking about bad luck. But for you to be consistently among the most injured teams for 12 of the last 13 seasons, that has to mean that you are doing something wrong. You just don't have that bad of a luck that consistently. And, I've been to 49ers training camp. There's nothing about it that looks weird. These guys are not doing things. It's got to be in the way they prepare their bodies or in the things they're doing when they're not out at practice. I'm just, because once you start playing football, it's only played one way. You play football and stuff happens and injuries happen. So to me, it has to be in the things that are going on outside of practice. I don't know, the way they're warming up, the way they're cooling down, the way they're taking care of their bodies when they're off the practice field. And there's got to be something wrong. Otherwise, it wouldn't be that consistent. I can't sit here and point to exactly what it is. Sograz says, I'm jealous of this training and health guys. I'm jealous of the training and health guys. I question whether they are competent, yet they don't have any chance of losing their jobs, it seems like. And look, again, I don't know enough about health, strength, training, all that stuff in order to just sit here and call for somebody's job based on their own incompetence. But at the same time, again, they're so consistently hurt that
you have to.
Something has to change. The old definition of insanity, doing the same thing year after year after year and expecting something different to happen. And that's just not happening. It would not surprise me if within the next 5 years, maybe less, the 49ers are probably not at that facility anymore. they're already running out of space. And I know everybody's going to think that that's like a cop out based on the fact that the substation's there and they're just going to want to get away with it. But in terms of what the 40, they only have the size of 2 football fields to practice on. And so they need more than that. The 49ers, like just the whole 49ers front office, weight room, practice facility needs a huge upgrade compared to what these other NFL teams are rolling out in terms of practice facilities and all this stuff. Like the 49ers is very, very outdated. The reason they can kind of get away with that is because everything sits right next to Levi Stadium. So that's integrated into it all. But the 49ers do need an upgrade there. And if whether you're suspicious or not, but they have to find something else. They have to start exploring every option because it's just too consistent. And the fact that the 49ers, again, have been so consistently injured and somebody like Dustin Perry has been with the team for 8 seasons, at this point, it just seems like malpractice. Whatever you want to blame it on, the buck has to stop with somebody. And I think the 49ers are at a point where they really, really, really need to take some very drastic measures in terms of dealing with the injuries. Because again, too consistent. It's every year. It's every time. They lead the way. They're always, up near the front in terms of players that are most injured. And it just kind of has to, something has to change. And the 49ers, the thing that bugs me a little bit that I'm leading into or that I'm thinking of now is they seem to kind of blow it off. Like every time they talk about it, every time they're asked about it, John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan kind of act like it's a little bit of a joke and they kind of act like they're already doing everything they could possibly do. And it's like, man, it's your football team. Why do we care about your football team? Or why does it seem like we're more inquisitive, something in there? Why do we care to ask questions more than they care to answer them? You would think that they would be interested in improving their team and their health in any way possible. And it just seems like something they blow off. And it's like, it's just too consistent to blow it off anymore.
Yeah, I mean, where do you go from here? Like, I would imagine they've already had plenty of conversations. Maybe they've already fired or hired other people and just had so much turnover year over year that where do you go from here? What could they do different in their minds? I wonder, because you would think, right? You would assume that after all of these years, they've already done everything that fans are talking about. They just haven't come out and said it. But I genuinely do not know what to do differently. Because in my mind, a $1 billion organization like this, or in a $1 billion league, you would have the resources to change things, and it just hasn't happened yet, man.
Yeah, it's going to have to because it's just too consistent to the point where it's got to be embarrassing to watch your team just be at the forefront of injuries season after season after season. Especially one like last season. Last season was such a weird anomaly when they went into that year thinking, well, it's not a rebuilding year, but we're obviously not trying to bring in every player we could possibly bring in. Oh, wait, we're actually pretty good. We're winning games. Now we're in the playoffs. Now we've won a playoff game. And the only thing that kept the 49ers from going further was just an absolute slew of injuries. Right. And I feel like we've just heard that story too many times for the team to just stay. Like, I understand Jed York, spent a bunch of money on pools and hired a couple more therapists, but it's going to take something more drastic than that. It's going to take a complete reimagining of everything this team does when it comes to strength and conditioning, because it's just not working, man. Like, whatever they're doing, it's not working, and we can all agree on that. It's just something has to change. You've got to get desperate. You've got to get creative, and you got to try and find a way to just be average. If the 49ers would just be average in terms of injury, things would look a lot better. But all right, let's get a little bit more positive with this. Let's KP, give me one of the players that you've just noticed in the headlines in a positive way. Let's do some standouts before we get out of here. Who have you noticed as you've been reading about what's going on at practice?
So I think John Chapman might have mentioned this, but one of the wide receivers that we talked about, I think it was a week or so ago, Wesley Grimes, undrafted free agent. Like, guys like that, they're going to be the ones to benefit. Guys like that are going to have the opportunity to step up and make plays while all these other guys. So I said that Mike Evans had a calf strain. He does not have a calf strain. It's a quad strain. Another wide receiver who was hurt has a calf strain. So there are enough injuries that I'm just confusing him. But Grimes,
at this point, we all understand. Like, we get it.
Right. Grimes is a guy who realistically is going to have, the opportunity to step up and play both Z, both F in the slot. So that'll allow him, especially in the preseason, going against lesser competition, who should be able to stand out. It's good to see positive reports about guys like Renardo Green, right? Who after what he went through last year, after understanding, all right, this is a huge year for a guy like Renardo Green, same class as Ricky Pearsall, right? You need to know what you have in him as well moving forward. So seeing that Renardo Green's doing well in camp, like those are the things you want to see. So thin at D line might involve, your corner stepping up. So we're hearing positive things about Jair Brown as well, which is really cool because I think he has like the football IQ. I don't know if he has the football, top tier athleticism, but the IQ is there. So that's a player that it would be tough for me to give up on as well.
Jair Brown is an interesting name to have on this list because I put him on the list for players that I feel like have stood out through the first little portions of camp. And it goes into what we were saying about the secondary going into this and the fact that you and I both had the safety group as one of the weakest position groups on the roster, but it was a little bit of an X factor given how much the 49ers were bringing in and how much they were rehauling the defense and how much they were overhauling the secondary. Like if I go in here and I look at the coaches, you've got a new defensive coordinator in Raheem Morris who has, I guess you could say an expertise, an emphasis on the secondary. And then you've brought in a new defensive backs coach in Ray Brown. And then you've got in the defensive passing game coordinator in Jerry Gray, who, from what I've heard, is one of the more respected secondary coaches in the NFL. And so you can see how somebody like Jair Brown, who for the most part, the vast majority of the fan base has completely lost faith in, and I don't necessarily blame him. For every play he made, there were 5 that he wouldn't make or where he would stand out in the opposite way. But we kept talking about like maybe this is what he needs. Maybe this is something he can benefit from. Everybody coaches the game so differently. It can be a personality thing. It can be a schematic thing. Sounds like from what Jair Brown said today in his press conference that it's more of a schematic thing. And then however Raheem Morris is utilizing this defense and whatever his coaches are asking him to do, he's more comfortable, he's having more fun, and he's clearly ahead of the game. He's getting his hands on the football. He's making he made a diving interception. Apparently, he should have made another one, I think, today. I don't know if he dropped it or whatever happened on that one, but it sounds like Jair Brown is really, really, really benefiting from the change of scenery with the coaches. And he hasn't had anything bad to say, obviously, about Robert Saleh and everything they had then. But you change scheme, and sometimes people just become more comfortable. And it sounds like Jair Brown is enjoying being able to rely on his brain and move with his eyes and trust his instincts. And so we'll see where that goes. And, that carries on to the entire group. We'll see where Malik Mustafa goes when he comes back. But I wonder if, why am I drawing a blank? Marquise Siegel is benefiting from this. Obviously, somebody that's very athletic, a strong athlete, has great physical tools and is great in the run game, but still has the physical tools to be like a deep safety. So that's an interesting one. The other one I put on here was Romello Height, who obviously scared everybody with the crazy full body cramps, and everybody got carted off and everybody thought the worst. But he was out there. He's getting a lot of snaps because the 49ers are so shorthanded in defensive end. There's been plenty of little instances where obviously he got caught up in the run game. That's if he's up on the line of scrimmage, any defense that's chosen to run the ball in that play is going to want to target him. But it sounds like even today, he even had a good rep against Trent Williams where he just dipped underneath him and was able to get by him. And that's a huge deal, man. Anytime a rookie can get one up on Trent Williams, like, okay, then that means you can beat every tackle in the NFL. And it doesn't mean you're going to do it a lot, but the 49ers don't need Romello Height to beat these tackles a lot. It'd be nice. They just need a couple times a game, where somebody with that type of speed can really change the way a play happens, based on what he can do. So who else did we got in here? We wrote down some names. You got Wesley Grimes, wrote down Jair Brown. Rest of the secondary seems like it's doing pretty well, no?
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's what you want to hear, right?
Yeah. So we got Renardo Green. Sounds like he's doing his thing. Diamador Lenore sounds like he's playing well. Even Jack Jones sounds like he's making his case to at least be the first man on the field if somebody like Ronaldo Green steps off for whatever reason. What'd you think of the old Mike Evans versus Upton Stout rep?
And that, my friends, is what it looks like to have height at receiver. Somebody who knows how to use his height, right? Somebody who knows how to time his jump. So it's one thing to be 6'5", but you can't judge the flight of the ball. It looked like he was in the air for like 5 seconds in that video. And that's an experienced wide receiver, right? Using his position to box out smaller DBs. That's why the 49ers red zone offense is going to be night and day from what it's been, because the difference of using like a Juwan Jennings height and a Mike Evans height in those condensed situations, just night and day, man. I think he knows how to just position himself, maneuver himself in throughout the route, and that's going to be a big difference. I'm sure it shows. It seems like every coach or player always talks about what Brock Purdy is able to do with Mike Evans in the red zone. So not terribly surprising, but still good to see because that's what you want.
Mike Evans is on the spider graph. Mike Evans is maxing out the height, weight, and arm length sections of his spider graph, and his vertical jump is 68% too. So yeah, it was funny. I was having some conversations on people who were replying to one of my tweets about that, and I mean, Upton Stout is what, 5'9", 5'10", somewhere in there. Mike Evans is 6'5" with 35-inch arms. Upton Stout could have been 6'1", 6'2", which is big for a corner, and there was still no way he was getting to that ball. Brock Purdy put it in a perfect spot. Mike Evans went up there and got it. And you could tell Upton Stout at one point, when he knew how that rep was going to go, was more concerned with how Mike Evans came back down and got back onto the ground versus actually defending the pass, because there was no defending that. And this is not a Upton Stout slander. This is just Mike Evans doing the thing. He could have done that to 95% of the corners in the NFL and probably had the same result. So that was just an impressive rep to see. Anybody else standing out to you? Got anybody else at the top of your brain that you feel like we should mention?
No, not really. That's a good thing though. So today was the first of the third set of practice blocks. So we're going to start to see more and more names, and that's good.
Yeah. Yep, we will. I think, we're good. We're 46 minutes in. So yeah, recap. Obviously, you've got Ricky Pearsall done for the year, and then Deebo Samuel steps in, and we'll see what he can make of his second stint with the 49ers. Again, if you're down on Deebo and you haven't done it yet, go look at his highlights from his last year in Washington, and it was still pretty impressive. Again, highlights. You're not looking at every snap, but who has time for that? Go check him out, and you can still see that Deebo is very, very much capable of making plays, and I'm interested to see how the 49ers integrate him. And it sounds like they want to take full advantage of having him on the team again, whether it's in the kick, punt return, or whether it's in the backfield, or whether it's out wide. It'll be interesting to see how they use him. All right, I think we did it. I think we did that thing. I appreciate everybody for hanging out. I appreciate everybody being in the comments, driving the conversation, contributing to the conversation. It means a lot to have you guys in here. If you haven't already, make sure you like the stream, because that is a YouTube thing. If you're watching it after the fact, still like the stream. Comment if you want. We will reply to comments after the fact as well. If you want to be a part of the conversation, make sure you're subscribed. If you're on the podcast side of thing, leave us a 5-star review. We would greatly appreciate that. And yeah, I think we did it. Trying to, for some reason in my head, there's something bugging me like I forgot about something. But I appreciate you guys again for hanging out and everybody listening. We did it. I think that does it for another episode. I'm Rob. That's KP. This is Striking Gold, and we are signing out.